Jezebel and Eve, two women notoriously blamed for women stepping out of their place in the Bible and ruining mankind and great men in general. Today, when a woman steps out of her place, she is reprimanded by others who say she has a Jezebel spirit. But this statement does not make sense in and of itself. Those who say this repeat cliches that are regurgitated in churches or by elders. And these church members and elders often have no insight on what they are even taught as churches preach, but often do not teach. And if they do teach, they teach only the history of the Israelites. They do not teach about explaining the cultures of the demonized groups encountered throughout the Bible. It is made out that the Israelites are the chosen people, and that is why everyone else outside of their group biblically in the Old Testament are called pagans and demonized. When you are programmed and taught this way without further explanation, however, it is difficult to be objective. As discussed many times before in my videos, pagan is just another term for a person of another religion, and we are all pagans to somebody. I explain this every video for newcomers, but if you are not new here, simply skip ahead to the next timestamp. Now, when the Bible speaks of pagan religions, it fails to go into detail that the pagans did indeed worship the biblical Yahweh. He was often the top of their pantheon of gods, but the problem is that biblical Yahweh did not accept the worshiping of other gods. These pagans worshipped other gods alongside Yahweh. For example, Asher is the son of the chosen son of Noah named Shem. Asher is said to be the progenitor of the Assyrians. The Assyrians were pagans. The Assyrians actually enslaved the 10 tribes of the kingdom of Israel and literally removed them from Israel and enslaved them in Assyria. Asher, the son of Shem, is named after the Mesopotamian deity Asher. Same spelling, same name. And Asher, the deity in Mesopotamia, also goes by the name of Anu, A-N-U. And Anu is the father of the reptilian Anunnaki, who rules over the outer space heavenly domain and is called the Heavenly Father in Christianity. This deity named Asher was the head deity of Shem's very own son's land. Assyria, like stated before, was polytheistic. And this is just one example of how the biblical pagans did indeed worship the same deity as the Israelites. The problem was that they worshipped other gods, who were just other Anunnaki entities. In Christianity, there is a Holy Trinity. And when you deep dive into the history of Christianity's real roots, it is actually based on the 3 highest entities that the pagans worshipped: 2 sons and 1 father. They were Anunnaki entities, and the Anunnaki pantheon is who the pagans worship, as that was the original religion of mankind. The Anunnaki are plastered all over the world's ancient ruins in all 4 corners. They were indeed aliens, but so are angels, interchangeable terms. These are entities from the heavens, which is outer space, and they created humans and were beyond more advanced than us, so we rightly deem them our gods. The 3 entities of the Christian pantheon include Anu, the deity that ruled over the heaven; Anu's son, Enlil, who was the sky, weather, and agricultural entity, who is also Thor, Zeus, Jupiter, and Set in other ancient religions, is whom the Sumerians called Satan, which means the great administrator in Sumerian. They called him this because Anu gave Enlil authority over all of Earth and all the entities on Earth and all the beings and life on Earth. So Enlil was head honcho. He thus was called the Prince and the Lord of the earth and the air. The first time we see the term Satan used is by the Sumerians, and Sumeria was the cradle of civilization after the flood. From Enlil's name comes the term Satan. Then there is Anu's other son, Enki. Enki is an underworld and underwater entity. The deep waters is called the abyss, so that is Enki's domain. But the abyss is also called hell in religion. But in the Mesopotamian narratives, Enki's domain of the abyss is not demonized. It is simply a domain where Enki and his subordinates are, because each Anunnaki entity is assigned a domain and a role. Enki is depicted as a merman because he is a reptilian, and he could go from full-on merman to a human with serpent-like features and a serpent phenotype that is commonly associated with indigenous Africans and East Asian ethnic groups with the slanting eyes. Enki is Horus, Osiris, Hercules, Jesus, Satan, Neptune, Hades, Poseidon, and those parallels in other ancient religions. Enki is the entity that actually created humans. While he is an Anunnaki figure, he is an alien, and he was a master geneticist. Enki is the deity of wisdom that went against Enlil by enlightening Eve in the garden. That story is nothing like what the Bible tells, however, and he was not being evil. He was trying to free humans and give them knowledge, and that caused a division between Enlil and Enki. Enlil sent the world flood out of rage of how enlightened Enki had made the humans, and how this new enlightenment brought forth the ability of free will, which is the ability to think for one's self. And now, humans with free will were choosing to appease and revere and worship the Anunnaki entities who sided with Enki. Just because these entities walked amongst humans and were more personable with humans and were not like those who followed Enlil, who literally sat high and looked low. Because of Enki's reptilian nature and his serpent phenotype, Enki is deemed the serpent in the Garden of Eden. The entities that sided with Enki were religiously later deemed as fallen angels, while those who wanted humans to remain ignorant and literally be slaves and cultivate the earth and labor without the ability to even reproduce and think for themselves, these entities were deemed good angels religiously. Enki's name in the ancient Canaanite language was Yahoo. In the ancient Hebrew language, Enki's name is the tetragram YHWH. Enki is Yahweh. Noah actually worshipped Enki, and Enki is who saved Noah. So in today's term, we would say that Satan was the one who Noah worshipped and who saved Noah. This is not what is said in the Bible, but this is why Christianity fuses all three entities, Anu, Enki, and Enlil, into one being called God, without further explanation, because after Noah survived the flood, Enlil found out and was completely enraged. But after seeing Enki's outrage, Enlil decided to bend and compromise instead. Humans were Enki's children, so of course, Enki did not like seeing all of his children and babies just dead and floating about as the waters descended upon the earth. In this compromise, since Enlil has the highest authority, it was decided that moving forward, it is best humans appease Enlil, solely Enlil, and this would be easier today if the world history prior to the flood was manipulated for future generations to believe that Enlil was the pure and good guy and Enki was the bad guy. The only problem was that Ham agreed to this to Enlil's face, but turned around and still passed on the history of the old world down to his generations and held on to the power and abilities that came with wisdom and enlightenment. And unfortunately for Enlil, Ham's lineage would be the first line after the flood to rule over all three lines of Noah and settle the first civilization after the flood, which is Sumeria, which turned into Babylon. All these entities' names, of course, became other names as the tongues of mankind were divided at the Tower of Babel. But these entities have went nowhere. They still exist in all religions. Shem's lineage and their history during biblical times were pagans majority of the time. First, they were enslaved by Nimrod, and even after Esau murdered Nimrod, it had been hundreds of years of these people being pagans since the time of Noah's Ark. And just like the enslavement of black people in the Americas is over, yet black people are still followers of Christianity and Catholicism, which are religions that actually began taking over Africa immediately following the death of Jesus in the 1st century. But typically after 2 generations of brainwashing, the deed is done. The culture is lost. Similarly, after Nimrod's murder, some of Shem's lineage took back their power and their allotted lands and subjected to servitude those from Cam's lineage that reigned over them previously. But after this, another Kemetic group, the Kemites of Egypt, ancient Egypt, which is actually called Kemet, these people enslaved the Semites in what is present-day Egypt. These Kemites enslaved not only the Semites, but also the servants of the Semites, which were other Kemetic groups. So the Semites were not only ruled by pagans in Kemet, which is ancient Egypt, but they were also enslaved with pagans of the same lineage for 400 years. Not to mention, since the time of the flood, these Semites were subjected to these Kemites, and they had been interbreeding with them this entire time. And what do you think happened once they got to the land of Kemet? They continued to interbreed with those who were enslaved with them, which were Kemites, and they were also subjected to other Kemites. It was a whole load of paganism going on here. So these Semites were thus pagans since the time of the flood occurring until the time they murdered the Canaanites and established the 12 tribes of Israel in Israel. In the story of Jezebel, we are told that she is a Phoenician princess. She is the daughter of King Ethbaal and the Zidonians. Zidon is the son of Canaan. So Jezebel is a Canaanite princess. The Canaanites worship the original religion that revered the Anunnaki entities. This is the original religion of mankind since before the flood. So of course, the biblical Yahweh was included in the ancient Canaanite pantheon of deities. When I say biblical Yahweh, I am referring to Enlil, because the real Yahweh was actually Enki, and biblically we call Enki Satan, as stated earlier in the background portion of this video. The names of the royals in Phoenicia included the name of their highest god, which is Baal, because the royals were akin to being gods in the same manner that Egyptian pharaohs were to be the personification of the gods in human form to lead the people. The Phoenicians were a great people and were considered the greatest traders, shipbuilders, and seafarers in ancient times. They are also best known in modern times for creating the first alphabet, which influenced writing systems everywhere. This is where we get hooked on phonics from. And phonics is the system used in early grade school to teach people to read by correlating sounds with letters or groups of letters in an alphabetic writing system. The Phoenicians were actually responsible for the word Bible. Their deity, Baalat, or the Lady of Biblios, is the deity known as Ishtar, who is Semiramis, which some people call Lilith, the wife of Satan, because she is actually Enki's wife. Funny enough, to the Romans, Ishtar is the deity named Venus, which is the morning star. She is also Lucifer. However, the Phoenicians called Ishtar Biblios and named their seaport of Gabal Biblios after her. In ancient times, all documents were written on papyrus, which was exported from Egypt but had to go through the seaport of Biblios. So eventually the name of the Egyptian papyrus was called Biblios to the Greeks, who would receive this papyrus after it had gone through the Phoenician seaport of Biblios. And then from there came the manipulation and rewriting and translation of the Hebraic manuscripts, of which the Greeks called the Septuagint. And later translations of the Septuagint would be called the Bible, which derives from the Canaanite deity of Ashtoreth, aka Ishtar, aka Venus, aka Lucifer, aka Biblios. Meaning the Bible is titled after the ancient Canaanite name for Lucifer. So the Phoenicians were another Kemetic lineage, and they also dwelt in the Nile Delta of Egypt as well as in the northern coast of Canaan, which later became the northern coast of Israel. In modern day, we are told that the entity Baal was evil. He is synonymous with Beelzebub, the Lord of Flies. However, step outside of what you have been told and actually research this entity. Baal is symbolized by a bull, a ram, and a thunderbolt. Enlil was called the bull and a ram and actually wore a horned crown of bull horns. And Enlil is a storm deity. That's the reason that the Greeks called him Zeus and the Romans called him Jupiter. The reason Baal is symbolized by the same attributes of Enlil is because Baal is Enlil. So to demonize Baal is to demonize the Christian biblical Yahweh. Baal's Greek equivalent is Zeus. Baal's Egyptian equivalent is Set. These are the same equivalents to Enlil.
Notice the staffs in both hands of both deities, as well as their horns. It is akin to the Triton of Zeus and the hammer of Thor.
Baal in the ancient Canaanite religion hated snakes because they were representatives of Yamu. Yamu was the Canaanite sea and river god. Yamu's Greek equivalent is Poseidon. His Roman equivalent is Neptune. Yamu is Enki. Because of Enki's many roles and abilities, even ancient religions would separate Enki into different entities within their pantheon. Just like in Christianity, Enki is Jesus and apparently also Satan, but really is the real Yahweh. In ancient Canaan, Enki was not only Yamu, but also the deity of chaos and evil named Tanin, and the underworld deity named Mot. The story of Jezebel is initially conflicting. For one, it is unclear whether things have been so lost from the time of the flood to the time of Jezebel that two kingdoms would be worshiping the same exact entity, just under different names, and not even recognize it. But I could relate to this because it's sort of like how in West African voodoo, their head deity is named Yehovah, and Christianity's head deity is Jehovah or Yahweh. The original Hebrew language did not even have vowels until 750 BC, which is when the Greeks added vowels to the Phoenician alphabet, which is the initial true alphabet. So these West African voodoo practitioners who had migrated over the course of centuries from Israel and Egypt during European colonization deeper into Africa, they still worship Yahweh and the other Anunnaki entities. They were still pagans worshiping the original religion, and their head entity was Yehovah. In their original Hebraic language, Yehovah would be YHWH, because when you remove the vowels from the deity Yehovah's name, the name is YHWH, and this is a voodoo god, the head voodoo god. This name is the same as the God of Yahweh that the Jews and the Christians worship, but Christians see voodoo as demonic and do not associate with the religion in any shape or form. All these religions are doing the exact same thing, but are too bent on being right and demonizing each other that they fail to see the uncanny parallels. The answer resides in the fact that when you look at the other attributes of Baal, Baal is a god of fertility, weather, rain, wind, lightning, seasons, war, and sailors. Enki is the fertility entity, and all the other attributes just named of Baal, they belong to Enlil, meaning that Baal is a fusion of Enlil and Enki, and this is likely why the Israelites rejected Baal. But Christianity does the same exact thing in the Trinity. Islam does a similar thing when it comes to the children of Enlil and the wife of Enki, who they actually worship. That's the crescent moon and the star on their flag.
At its core, Judaism does not ascribe to the Christian Trinity because it was known to them that the biblical Satan and Jesus and Enki were the same deity. Judaism only ascribes to Enlil, who is biblical Yahweh. Jews do not believe Jesus is the Messiah, because at Judaism's origins, it was understood that Enki is Jesus, and the biblical Satan. Not to mention that all the authors of the New Testament were dead while the books were being written. It is understood that the New Testament was the agenda of the Romans to use religion to conquer, while also including themselves, Gentiles, as a people who were not Jews, but could still garner God's favor. It was the beginning of the New World Order, as they later created Catholicism.
The divine feminine is an energy that encompasses intuition, collaboration, reflection, patience, empathy, grounding, nurturing, creativity, expression, vulnerability, trust, wisdom, flexibility, healing, love, emotion, and similar facets. The divine masculine encompasses logic, strength, reason, loyalty, survival, action, rationality, focus, dignity, confidence, and similar attributes. Toxic femininity and masculinity is the imbalance of the divine feminine and divine masculine. Traits of the toxic feminine include selfishness, sabotage, jealousy, isolation, impatience, playing victim, repression, hopelessness, and similar facets. Traits of the toxic masculine include weakness, playing victim, anger, being intimidated, egotistic, reckless, indecisive, cowardice, and so forth. The left side of the brain is in charge of noting the differences between things, separating wholes into parts, and enabling us to deal with all sequential phenomena. This mode of thinking is popularly known as analytical, Cartesian, serial, linear, deductive, and segregative. Left-sided cultures are, thus, exclusive, meaning they are not accepting of those who are different from the majority or ruling. Rather that be people of a different gender, skin tone, culture, race, sexual preference, or belief system. These others are typically excluded, oppressed, and or forced into changing because of their differences. These cultures have many schisms and gaps between people, so much so that these cultures are bent on individualism, or the principle of being independent and self-reliant. It is a self-centered and ego-driven culture. Individuals to be negligent of the issues of others within their own society, even if these issues are prominent and faced by the majority population. Left-sided individuals typically easily turn blind eyes to others within their culture if they themselves are not a part or did not originate from the short end of the stick. Religion is defined as the organized and structured faith and worship of a superhuman controlling power, especially of a personal god or gods. Those words, structure, organized, controlling, these are facets of the divine masculine, and religion is masculine and conservative. Left-sided cultures as a whole resonate with the divine masculine. Shem and Japheth's lineages often fell into being masculine. Thus, Ahab, the husband of Jezebel, was from a left-sided culture, a patriarchal culture as well. The right side of the brain is in charge of noting the similarities between things and their relation to each other, thus unifying them. This mode of thinking is generally known as synthetical, holistic, and congregative. Right-sided cultures are inclusive and appreciate and respect the differences of others and believe all things, humans, animals, plants, all life forms in general share a bond. Spirituality is more of an individual practice and has to do with having a sense of peace and purpose and methods of worship, praise, ascension, and is not defined by man-made terms but by feelings and spontaneous expression. It has no rules. It is liberal. Right-sided cultures subscribe to spirituality and not religion. Because spirituality is based on an individual's own expression, these cultures being based on accepting those who are different than themselves is key. Right-sided cultures resonate with the divine feminine. The lineages of Cam were typically feminine, or a good balance of the divine feminine and divine masculine. Jezebel was from a right-sided culture. The terms feminine and masculine have nothing to do with gender in this aspect, however, as it is believed that each individual, regardless of gender, should seek to balance the divine feminine and the divine masculine within themselves. Calling a culture feminine does not by no means define them as weak. Feminine cultures were very prosperous and more advanced than masculine cultures until or unless a masculine culture invaded them and took everything that they had and made it their own just to prosper, or a masculine culture would often simply marry the princess of a feminine culture to get ahead. Divided we fall, together we stand could not be more true. The balance and the unification of a right-sided culture always allowed them to progress faster, but the aggression and ego of a masculine culture would allow them to progress through means of aggression, ego, and war, or a business-based marriage. It is not just a gender aspect, however, but also a spiritual aspect. Matriarchal civilizations are civilizations in which men and women are equal and the surname or the last name of a family is passed down through the mother. There are queen mothers in these civilizations and women are highly honored, but men are not oppressed in these civilizations by no means, just because the woman is revered. Women are allowed to rule in these civilizations, and each gender understands their physical and natural contribution to the world, their partner, and to the community, and is respected by the opposite gender for it. Think power couple. Women are seen and heard in these cultures, and it is very okay and much respected. In such societies in ancient times, men still were the hunters because of the natural physical build of a man that allows him to be great at hunting. So the man would still be the breadwinner, while his wife would still be his equal, and he would still provide for her because of what her natural build and mind brought to the household and the community. Women were not forsaken from hunting in these societies if they deemed to want to, but the man and the woman used their differences to work together better versus apart. They were not at odds and by no means challenged by the natural gifts that the different genders are born with. That is to say that strong men were not threatened by strong, intelligent women, and strong, intelligent women were not threatened by strong, intelligent men. There was an understanding. That is what balance brings. These cultures and the individuals within them resonate with the balance of the divine feminine and masculine. Phoenicia was a balance of the divine feminine and the divine masculine. While there were societal schisms, we do know that women and men were considered equals. Patriarchal civilizations are civilizations in which women are not equal to men, but are lower in status to men. In these civilizations, the surname or the last name and power and wealth of a family is passed down through the father. Women are oppressed in these civilizations and are socially conditioned to follow gender roles. Things are not 50-50 in these societies, and when women start to cross too much into their masculine energy, men are typically threatened by the woman's attempt to balance her divine feminine and divine masculine, and the woman often faces pushback and ultimatums. Women are to be seen and not heard in these cultures. These cultures are rarely ever just patriarchal civilizations. They often fall into being toxically masculine and toxically feminine. Patriarchal civilizations are the poster children of being the imbalance of the divine feminine and the divine masculine. Ancient Israel and its culture and religion was patriarchal. This is the civilization that Ahab came from, versus Jezebel, who came from a matriarchal civilization. The thing is, matriarchal and right-sided societies are naturally more accepting and non-judgmental of other cultures. In translation, this is the reason biblical pagans were able to accept the Israelites until the Israelites started being judgmental and shunning the biblical pagans and their beliefs while inside these biblical pagan lands. It is sort of like inviting your weird friend who has no other friends into your home, and they begin to scrutinize you and pick you apart when all you have ever done was love and accept them for who they are and never tried to change them like everybody else did. Yet here they are picking you apart, trying to change you when you would never try to do such a thing to them. This is what patriarchal cultures often did, and you see this a lot in the Bible with the Israelites when they go into these pagan lands. Patriarchal cultures and left-sided societies and individuals and religions will always try to change those outside of themselves, and if they cannot change them, they will exclude them. Christians are obviously left-sided. Jehovah's Witnesses are left-sided. Cults are left-sided. Patriarchal religions are those that by traditional means would have followers who would separate themselves from family if said family did not adhere to their same religion and way of life. For example, the Dravidians are the direct descendants of King Nimrod and were a feminine and right-sided society. But once the Aryans from Shem and Japheth's lineage, who were patriarchal and left-sided, ran into the Dravidians, they did not try to become friends with the friendly Dravidians. They did not try to live amongst them in harmony. They wanted to conquer them, and so they did. And then they changed the Dravidian spirituality into a religion, which today is the eldest surviving religion, called Hinduism. In terms of Jezebel and her husband Ahab, it is nothing for a biblical pagan to marry an Israelite. But because of cultural differences and the nature of left-sided versus right-sided religions and cultures, the opposite is not true. So Israelites would not and were not accepting of pagans being amongst them, as patriarchal societies are divisive. We see this a lot in Christianity. A lot of people even stop going to church or being a Christian because of everything they do being scrutinized and condemned. Not to mention that in ancient pagan civilizations from Cam's lineage, women were not expected to change their belief system or ways for the man they married, even if that man was of a more strict culture. This was common knowledge about Cam's lineage, and actually the reason why Rebekah did not want Jacob to marry any of the women from Cam's lineage, as his brother Esau had done. Contrary to popular belief, it was not because of skin color. These women from Cam's lineage were so liberated, they were considered exotic, and it was common knowledge of their culture and that they would not bow down and convert. It was not in their custom to do so, and other biblical patriarchs, such as Abraham and King Solomon, who married women from Cam's lineage at the latter part of their lives, were said to have fallen astray because of so. Because often when people are around spiritualism and the whole culture that comes with it, they become so enlightened that they do not turn back. Sort of like once you go black, you do not turn back. But anyways, enlightenment was always the issue when it came to Enlil, who is biblical Yahweh, as noted in the original Garden of Eden story, which is a part of the Mesopotamian narratives that we discussed earlier in the background portion of this video. Enlightenment was always the issue, and right-sided cultures were enlightened. That's why they adhere to spirituality. It is rare that people wake up in that sense and are able to just ever return to being constrained and condemned at every turn. This freedom and enlightenment is what the Bible demonizes by calling it matters of the flesh. But enlightenment of any sort is actually demonized by the Bible. From this explanation, you can now understand that Jezebel and Ahab's cultures could not have been further apart and polar opposite. And while it was completely okay for Jezebel to marry an Israelite, given the nature of Israelites, Ahab knew better than to pursue a woman like Jezebel, and knew she would not change or reduce or constrain herself by any means, as it was not in her culture to convert. Not to mention, she was a princess. She is the embodiment of all the women in her culture. He knew what she worshipped and the tradition of her and her people. He knew that she would be the type of wife and woman to stand beside him instead of behind him, and that she would be a business partner to him instead of just being a trophy and prize wife. He knew this before pursuing her, and he still married her. But Ahab also knew how prosperous Phoenicia was and wanted in on it. This was a business marriage, and perhaps Jezebel was a very beautiful woman, and with Ahab being deemed a wicked king of Israel, he probably was lustful. He probably did not care that Jezebel was the complete opposite of everything that the woman and his culture stood for. He liked it, he wanted it, he put a ring on it. He did that. Yet she gets all the flack because of this lustful, gold-digging, no backbone having, God-forsaken man. It is 2022. I do not understand how people still try to condemn other women by telling them that they have a Jezebel spirit. We are in a day and an age where you do not have to get married to a man just to obtain wealth, stability, and a bank account. Thus, women have begun to explore the divine masculine. Remember, each individual should seek to obtain a balance of the divine feminine and the divine masculine, regardless of gender. In previous generations, women were more prone to the divine feminine because of the patriarchal construct at those times. Now that women are coming into balance in the same patriarchal society, men are going absolutely nuts and trying to put us back in our place and constantly complain about what they want and what we do not do anymore. The masculine is threatened by the balance of the woman because we live in a toxically unbalanced patriarchal society. Black women are called loud, too opinionated, strong, manly, aggressive, and so forth. But it is within us that our ancestors are fighting. Because when we trace our roots back, our ancestors were not women without a voice and without opinion prior to enslavement. And even during enslavement, though it was more constrained, we still were opinionated and strong. When something comes natural to you, nobody has to constantly remind you of what you should be, how you should act, how you should talk, how you should walk, and where your place should be and is. It should come naturally, but it does not come naturally to us because this was not our original way. We were able to be strong women, and the men were able to be strong men who still understood that there were certain things that men were expected to do, and women could do them as well, but that did not mean that she was not to be treated as a woman. And this energy was reciprocated between both genders. Nowadays, this nonsense that is going on is to try to reduce us to a level that makes them comfortable. But the reason that they have to keep shoving these mantras down our throats is because it is unnatural for a black woman to be that way. It rings through our DNA to resist. If you are angry, be angry. It is a human emotion that needs to be felt, just like any other natural emotion. Do not try to repackage your anger. Be angry, be sad, be happy, be glad. Do not allude to toxic positivity. Like all things, there needs to be a balance. Stop letting these people tell you how you are supposed to act and experience emotions and use religion to scare you. God was so angry in the Bible that he caused the majority of all the murders inside of it. You being mad because somebody with microaggressions is consistently offending you is seriously not a bad thing in comparison. I'm not saying to go kill people, but do not let them silence you and appropriate your anger because they say you have a Jezebel spirit. Jezebel was a strong black woman. Jezebel was of Cam's Canaanite lineage. It is perfectly fine for us black women to connect to her story. Jezebel was not wrong after all. It was simply a matter of a cultural difference. She spoke up and she took charge because in her culture, the women were not just fragile princesses. They were well-rounded women. In the Israelite culture, yes, her traits could be deemed as negative, very negative, and even demonic, but Ahab signed up for all of that. He should get the blame, not her. He knew what it was. Men do it all the time, bite off more than they can chew. These men will literally go out and date an Instagram model or a stripper and then complain because she takes half-naked pictures on the internet. You knew what it was because it is what first caught your attention. You knew this is how this woman makes her money. And you knew she was about her coins. And yet and still you decided to pursue her. You got her now. And now you are mad because she is going to continue being that same woman that you fell for. Being that same woman that you lusted after. Being that same woman that you courted, got to know, and you decided to act scout. You are mad because she is going to continue doing her and being her authentic self and continue getting to the money the way she has been getting to the money. Please do not have an Ahab spirit. Do not be ridiculous. If you cannot handle a bad chick, do not date one. Move around. Ahab spirit. I think us talking about Ahab and what he did is actually a much better lesson. Let's talk about how he habitually ignored red flags and then played a victim and allowed others to talk about his wife and influence how he felt about her because he had no backbone. When really, his wife was that chick. He couldn't get something done, so she stepped in and got it done for him. He should have been kissing her toes. How ungrateful. And in today's time where women are educated, fighting for gender equality in the workplace, filling roles in politics, and breaking down barriers, these same women should not turn around and correlate being a Jezebel with being somebody negative and a prostitute. Not to mention the woman Jezebel. This woman was never a prostitute. She was royalty, and biblical pagans were called prostitutes because if one god did not reciprocate their love, their sacrifice, and their energy, they simply moved on to the next because they knew the truth about who these gods were better than anybody. They knew about the world prior to the flood. They knew that these deities were tangible and had personalities, flaws, pros, cons, like any other intelligent life form. However, they also understood that these entities were more advanced than them, and that they did have abilities that came along with being advanced, and that these deities played an integral part in creating them. So of course they revered and worshipped them and went to them for help and for blessings. And that is what is not explained in these churches. So when I say pastors do not dive into the other side of the story, this is exactly what I mean. It is always critical to obtain the perspective of the other side, because in extreme cases such as the Bible, there is no good or evil. There is only perception and the victors who are writing history that changes everything. And yet, people will demonize pagans for moving on from one god to the next when a god would not reciprocate their energy, but yet will sit on here and preach about having boundaries and preach about cutting off low vibrational people and energy leeches. The irony. Now, with all that being said, let's jump into the actual story of Jezebel. You can better interpret it now. If you care to join along, please turn with me to 1 Kings 16 and 25, King James Version.
Chapter 16.
Then the word of the Lord came to Jehu the son of Hanani against Baasha, saying, Forasmuch as I exalted thee out of the dust, and made thee prince over my people Israel, and thou hast walked in the way of Jeroboam, and hast made my people Israel to sin, to provoke me to anger with their sins, behold, I will take away the posterity of Baasha and the posterity of his house, and will make thy house like the house of Jeroboam the son of Nebat. Him that dieth of Baasha in the city shall the dogs eat, and him that dieth of his in the fields shall the fowls of the air eat. Now the rest of the acts of Baasha, and what he did, and his might, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Israel? So Baasha slept with his fathers, and was buried in Tirzah, and Elah his son reigned in his stead. And also by the hand of the prophet Jehu the son of Hanani came the word of the Lord against Baasha and against his house, even for all the evil that he did in the sight of the Lord, in provoking him to anger with the work of his hands, in being like the house of Jeroboam, and because he killed him. In the 26th year of Asa king of Judah began Elah the son of Baasha to reign over Israel in Tirzah 2 years. And his servant Zimri, captain of half his chariots, conspired against him, as he was in Tirzah, drinking himself drunk in the house of Arzah, steward of his house in Tirzah. And Zimri went in and smote him, and killed him, in the 27th year of Asa king of Judah, and reigned in his stead. And it came to pass, when he began to reign, as soon as he sat on his throne, that he slew all the house of Baasha. He left him not one that pisseth against a wall, neither of his kinsfolks, nor of his friends. Thus did Zimri destroy all the house of Baasha, according to the word of the Lord which he spake against Baasha by Jehu the prophet, for all the sins of Baasha, and the sins of Elah his son, by which they sinned, and by which they made Israel to sin, in provoking the Lord God of Israel to anger with their vanities. Now the rest of the acts of Elah, and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Israel? In the 27th year of Asa king of Judah did Zimri reign 7 days in Tirzah. And the people were encamped against Gibbethon, which belonged to the Philistines. And the people that were encamped heard say, Zimri hath conspired, and hath also slain the king. Wherefore all Israel made Omri the captain of the host king over Israel that day in the camp. And Omri went up from Gibbethon, and all Israel with him, and they besieged Tirzah. And it came to pass, when Zimri saw that the city was taken, that he went into the palace of the king's house, and burnt the king's house over him with fire, and died, for his sins which he sinned in doing evil in the sight of the Lord, in walking in the way of Jeroboam, and in his sin which he did, to make Israel to sin. Now the rest of the acts of Zimri, and his treason that he wrought, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Israel? Then were the people of Israel divided into 2 parts. Half of the people followed Tibni the son of Ginath to make him king, and half followed Omri. But the people that followed Omri prevailed against the people that followed Tibni the son of Ginath. So Tibni died, and Omri reigned. In the 31st year of Asa king of Judah began Omri to reign over Israel 12 years. 6 years reigned he in Tirzah. And he bought the hill Samaria of Shemer for 2 talents of silver, and built on the hill, and called the name of the city which he built after the name of Shemer, owner of the hill, Samaria. But Omri wrought evil in the eyes of the Lord, and did worse than all that were before him. For he walked in all the way of Jeroboam the son of Nebat, and in his sin wherewith he made Israel to sin, to provoke the Lord God of Israel to anger with their vanities. Now the rest of the acts of Omri which he did, and his might that he showed, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Israel? So Omri slept with his fathers, and was buried in Samaria, and Ahab his son reigned in his stead. And in the 38th year of Asa king of Judah began Ahab the son of Omri to reign over Israel. And Ahab the son of Omri reigned over Israel in Samaria 22 years. And Ahab the son of Omri did evil in the sight of the Lord above all that were before him. And it came to pass, as if it had been a light thing for him to walk in the sins of Jeroboam the son of Nebat, that he took to wife Jezebel, the daughter of Ethbaal, king of the Zidonians, and went and served Baal, and worshipped him. And he reared up an altar for Baal in the house of Baal, which he had built in Samaria. And Ahab made a grove, and Ahab did more to provoke the Lord God of Israel to anger than all the kings of Israel that were before him. In his days did Hiel the Bethelite build Jericho. He laid the foundation thereof in Abiram his firstborn, and set up the gates thereof in his youngest son Segub, according to the word of the Lord which he spake by Joshua the son of Nun.
This chapter talks about the fight for power, as after King Solomon's death, there was a civil war that broke out between the 12 tribes of Israel, which latter resulted in the whole of Israel being divided into two parts. There was the 10 northern tribes that were called collectively the Kingdom of Israel, and then there was the 2 southern tribes, which were composed of the tribes of Judah and Benjamin. These 2 tribes collectively were called the Kingdom of Judah. This is where the real Jews are from, and why all Jews are Israelites and all Jews are children of Shem, and thus all Jews are Semites. But not all Semites and Israelites are Jews. To be a Jew means to come from the tribe of Benjamin and or Judah, or to have been a part of the survivors from the 10 northern tribes who escaped and took refuge in the 2 southern tribes of the Kingdom of Judah when Assyria captured the 10 northern tribes. I do not know where the white Ashkenazi Jews, who are the descendants of Ashkenaz, who is the grandson of Japheth, fit into being an actual Jew, but let's not get started on that. So in chapter 16, we see 5 kings and a lot of bloodshed as the civil war in northern Israel goes on. When this chapter references the passing of time by stating in the 20th and 6th year of Asa, it is referring to Asa, the 5th king of the 2 southern tribes of Benjamin and Judah that make up the Kingdom of Judah. Asa is from the tribe of Judah and is the great-grandson of King Solomon and the great-great-grandson of David. So while the 12 tribes have split into southern and northern kingdoms, the northern tribe is having its very own civil war as different men from different tribes raise up to try to take the throne to be the king of the northern kingdom of Israel. In this chapter, all this occurs in the north while King Asa is still the king of the kingdom of Judah in southern Israel. Baasha was from the tribe of Issachar, and Baasha was the 3rd king of the 10 northern tribes that make up the kingdom of Israel. He ruled for 24 years, and Baasha had came to power by murdering the previous king of the kingdom of Israel named Nebat. Baasha had murdered Nebat in Gibbethon. Gibbethon was a city in the land of Canaan, but at this particular time, it was occupied by the tribe of Dan. Gibbethon was also recorded in this chapter as being a city of Philistines. The Philistines were originally a people from the stock of Cam's Mitzrayim lineage, despite the fact that the Philistines and the people of Kemet did endure a few feuds against each other. The Philistines would later interbreed with the Canaanites and were also the main enemies of the Israelites. So inside the tribe of Dan were these Philistines. Obviously, we can see here that when the Israelites took their land from the Canaanites, they did not exactly finish the job, as we see lots of Canaanite ethnic groups pop up still, here and there, such as the Philistines and the Phoenicians. Though Baasha remained in power for life, he made a lot of enemies, and the prophet Jehu prophesied the assassination of Baasha's son and entire family that would come to pass because of Baasha's wickedness. Elam is the son of Baasha and succeeded his father and reigned for 2 years. Elam was in a place called Arza getting drunk when his chariot commander Zimri killed him and then took the throne in a place called Tirzah, which is just outside the vicinity of modern-day Palestine. Zimri then had Baasha's entire family killed because of their sins. When the army of the kingdom of Israel heard about Elam's murder, they proclaimed Omri as the new king. Omri was the 6th king of the 10 northern tribes that make up the kingdom of Israel. He was a great military campaigner. His lineage is not told of, so we do not know which tribe he exactly came from, but it is theorized that Omri was from the tribe of Issachar as well. So now, in the kingdom of Israel's 10 northern tribes fight for the throne, we have Team Zimri and Team Omri. Team Omri takes over the city of Tirzah, and when Zimri discovered what they had done, he basically admitted defeat, and then he set fire to the palace in Tirzah and committed suicide and died inside of it. But the problems did not stop there. Now the 10 northern tribes are fighting for which tribe will lead the 10 tribes, and so they are going at it. Tibri was from the tribe of Ephraim and was a claimant to the throne of Israel. So now we have Team Tibni and Team Omri. Well, Tibni is killed and Omri becomes the new king of the 10 tribes of the kingdom of Israel and reigns for 12 years. Omri was very wicked and was said to be more evil and sinned far more than all the kings before him combined. Omri's son is Ahab. After the death of King Omri, his son Ahab took the throne of Israel. Ahab marries the Phoenician princess from Cam's Canaanite Zidonian lineage named Jezebel, and Ahab begins to serve Jezebel's god, Baal, and even goes as far as to create an altar for Baal in Samaria, Israel. Ahab also builds an Asherah pole. Asherah is another parallel of the Mesopotamian birth and earth goddess Ki, who is the wife of Enki, and the goddess that Enlil, aka biblical Yahweh, actually rapes in Mesopotamian narratives. She is also Ninserag, Ishtar, Isis, Hathor, Biblios, Mamiwata, Yamaya, Aphrodite, Venus, the morning star, Lucifer, Mother Earth, Lilith, the Statue of Liberty, the mother of Easter, the star on the flag of Islam, the wife of Nimrod, the mother of Tammuz, the Anunnaki womb goddess that birthed Adam, and the wife of Satan. As we can see though, prior to Jezebel even entering the equation, Israel had its own great evils going on, and Ahab was a product and poster child for every bit of it on his very own. By the way, if you're wondering what the book of the Chronicles of the Kings of Israel is, it is an extra-canonical book, which is a book that one of the several cults that have edited the Bible decided not to include in the final print of the Bible that we have available to us today. It is a book that gives a much more detailed account of the reigns of the kings of the ancient kingdom of Israel than that told in the Hebrew Bible. The story of Jezebel continues in 1 Kings chapter 18.
Chapter 18.
And it came to pass after many days that the word of the Lord came to Elijah in the 3rd year, saying, Go, show thyself unto Ahab, and I will send rain upon the earth. And Elijah went to show himself unto Ahab, and there was a sore famine in Samaria. And Ahab called Obadiah, which was the governor of his house. Now Obadiah feared the Lord greatly. For it was so when Jezebel cut off the prophets of the Lord, that Obadiah took 100 prophets and hid them by 50 in a cave, and fed them with bread and water. And Ahab said unto Obadiah, Go into the land unto all fountains of water, and unto all brooks, peradventure we may find grass to save the horses and mules alive, that we lose not all the beasts. So they divided the land between them to pass throughout it. Ahab went one way by himself, and Obadiah went another way by himself. And as Obadiah was in the way, behold, Elijah met him. And he knew him, and fell on his face, and said, Art thou that my lord Elijah? And he answered him, I am. Go tell thy lord, behold, Elijah is here. And he said, What have I sinned, that thou wouldest deliver thy servant into the hand of Ahab to slay me? As the Lord thy God liveth, there is no nation or kingdom whither my Lord hath not sent to seek thee. And when they said, He is not there, he took an oath of the kingdom and nation that they found thee not. And now thou sayest, Go, tell thy Lord, behold, Elijah is here. And it shall come to pass, as soon as I am gone from thee, that the Spirit of the Lord shall carry thee whither I know not. And so when I come and tell Ahab, and he cannot find thee, he shall slay me. But I thy servant fear the Lord from my youth. Was it not told, my Lord, what I did when Jezebel slew the prophets of the Lord? How I hid 100 men of the Lord's prophets by 50 in a cave, and fed them with bread and water? And now thou sayest, Go, tell thy Lord, behold, Elijah is here, and he shall slay me. And Elijah said, As the Lord of hosts liveth, before whom I stand, I will surely show myself unto him today. So Obadiah went to meet Ahab, and told him, and Ahab went to meet Elijah. And it came to pass, when Ahab saw Elijah, that Ahab said unto him, Art thou he that troubleth Israel? And he answered, I have not troubled Israel, but thou and thy father's house, in that ye have forsaken the commandments of the Lord, and thou hast followed Baalim. Now therefore send and gather to me all Israel unto Mount Carmel, and the prophets of Baal 450, and the prophets of the groves 400, which eat at Jezebel's table. So Ahab sent unto all the children of Israel, and gathered the prophets together unto Mount Carmel. And Elijah came unto all the people, and said, How long halt ye between two opinions? If the Lord be God, follow him, but if Baal, then follow him. And the people answered him not a word. Then said Elijah unto the people, I, even I only, remain a prophet of the Lord, but Baal's prophets are 450 men. Let them therefore give us 2 bullocks, and let them choose 1 bullock for themselves, and cut it in pieces, and lay it on wood, and put no fire under. And I will dress the other bullock, and lay it on wood, and put no fire under. And call ye on the name of your gods, and I will call on the name of the Lord. And the God that answereth by fire, let him be God. And all the people answered and said, It is well spoken. And Elijah said unto the prophets of Baal, Choose you 1 bullock for yourselves, and dress it first, for ye are many. And call on the name of your gods, but put no fire under. And they took the bullock which was given them, and they dressed it, and called on the name of Baal from morning even until noon, saying, O Baal, hear us. But there was no voice, nor any that answered, and they leaped upon the altar which was made. And it came to pass at noon that Elijah mocked them, and said, Cry aloud, for he is a god. Either he is talking, or he is pursuing, or he is in a journey, or peradventure he sleepeth, and must be awaked. And they cried aloud, and cut themselves after their manner with knives and lancets, till the blood gushed out upon them. And it came to pass, when midday was past, and they prophesied until the time of the offering of the evening sacrifice, that there was neither voice, nor any to answer, nor any that regarded. And Elijah said unto all the people, Come near unto me. And all the people came near unto him. And he repaired the altar of the Lord that was broken down. And Elijah took 12 stones, according to the number of the tribes of the sons of Jacob, unto whom the word of the Lord came, saying, Israel shall be thy name. And with the stones he built an altar in the name of the Lord. And he made a trench about the altar, as great as would contain 2 measures of seed. And he put the wood in order, and cut the bullock in pieces, and laid him on the wood, and said, Fill 4 barrels with water, and pour it on the burnt sacrifice and on the wood. And he said, Do it the 2nd time. And they did it the 2nd time. And he said, Do it the 3rd time. And they did it the 3rd time. And the water ran round about the altar, and he filled the trench also with water. And it came to pass, at the time of the offering of the evening sacrifice, that Elijah the prophet came near, and said, Lord God of Abraham, Isaac, and of Israel, let it be known this day that thou art God in Israel, and that I am thy servant, and that I have done all these things at thy word. Hear me, O Lord, hear me, that this people may know that thou art the Lord God, and that thou hast turned their heart back again. Then the fire of the Lord fell, and consumed the burnt sacrifice, and the wood, and the stones, and the dust, and licked up the water that was in the trench. And when all the people saw it, they fell on their faces, and they said, The Lord, he is the God, the Lord, he is the God. And Elijah said unto them, Take the prophets of Baal, let not one of them escape. And they took them, and Elijah brought them down to the brook Kishon, and slew them there. And Elijah said unto Ahab, Get thee up, eat and drink, for there is a sound of abundance of rain. So Ahab went up to eat and to drink. And Elijah went up to the top of Carmel, and he cast himself down upon the earth, and put his face between his knees, and said to his servant, Go up now, look toward the sea. And he went up and looked, and said, There is nothing. And he said, Go again 7 times. And it came to pass at the 7th time that he said, Behold, there ariseth a little cloud out of the sea like a man's hand. And he said, Go up, say unto Ahab, Prepare thy chariot, and get thee down, that the rain stop thee not. And it came to pass in the meanwhile that the heaven was black with clouds and wind, and there was a great rain. And Ahab rode and went to Jezreel. And the hand of the Lord was on Elijah, and he girded up his loins, and ran before Ahab to the entrance of Jezreel.
Let's dissect chapter 18. In this chapter, the Lord tells Elijah to go to Ahab and then he would send rain to Israel. During this time, Samaria, a city in Israel, was experiencing a very severe famine. Ahab has summoned Obadiah, his palace administrator, to get grass from the various areas throughout Israel in hopes of saving the livestock animals from starvation. Ahab also went out to look for grass himself. When Obadiah went out, he met with Elijah, and upon recognizing who Elijah was, he immediately bowed down, and Elijah told Obadiah that he would go see Ahab. Obadiah ran back and told King Ahab about Elijah, and when Ahab saw Elijah, he began to immediately accuse Elijah of basically cursing Israel and causing the famine. Well, remember, Enlil is biblical Yahweh, and Enlil is a sky, weather, and agricultural deity who prior to Noah's flood sent waves of pestilences, famines, and droughts, and local floods all over the world to slowly depopulate humans because he was very unhappy with humans. Enlil's signature move is droughts, pestilence, and famine. It is his way of starving people out until they have no choice but to turn to him. And because he is the head Anunnaki entity on earth, the other Anunnaki entities that the people would normally turn to will have to turn their backs on their very own worshippers if Enlil steps in, just like they were forced to do during the world flood. They were bound by oath not to help mankind. This oath was even deadly for the Anunnaki themselves, so their hands are often very much tied when Enlil does actually step in. So here Israel is suffering from a drought, and Enlil sends Elijah. Elijah is a prophet of God who is known to be a miracle worker. The book of Malachi prophesies Elijah's return before the coming of the great and terrible day of the Lord, which is basically saying that Elijah will return before mankind, before the coming of the rapture. Elijah is just like Enoch. Elijah was raptured up to the heavens by what the Bible calls a chariot of fire and horses of fire. It is said that Elijah went up to the heavens in a whirlwind. Meanwhile, Elijah never had an earthly death and was taken up to the heavens in an array of biblical poetic words that basically describe an alien spaceship, but you get the point. It is believed that before the rapture, both Enoch and Elijah will actually come back to prophesy and witness to the masses. Elijah tells King Ahab that the drought on Israel is Ahab's very own fault for the trouble that he and his family has caused, and the fact that Ahab has since abandoned God's command and started following Baal. We find out in this chapter that Jezebel ordered the murdering of Yahweh's prophets, and Obadiah states he was able to save at least some of them by helping them out 50 at a time in a cave. Elijah tells Ahab to summon all of the people of Israel at Mount Carmel. He was also to bring all the prophets of Baal and the prophets of Asherah. At this point, we realize that Baal, being a fusion deity of Enki and Enlil, is not okay with Enlil, as the Israelites only worship Enlil, as explained earlier. Orthodox Jews do not even accept the Christian Trinity at all. For this very reason, there is no Trinity, there is only Enlil, who is biblical Yahweh. There is no fusion. Enlil does not want the worshipping of Enki or any other Anuna entity for that matter in any way, shape, or form. Elijah goes and meets with everyone at Mount Carmel and told them to either follow biblical Yahweh or follow Baal. The people did not respond at all to Elijah's command. They go completely silent, matter of fact. Elijah challenges them to basically have Baal show his power, and for an entire day, the prophets of Baal perform rituals and even shed their own blood to summon Baal. But nothing happens. Elijah then restores Yahweh's altar and takes 12 stones, which represents the 12 tribes of Israel. Remember, Enki is of lesser authority to Enlil, and Enki is a keeper of peace. So while he would be the one Anunnaki entity that could take Enlil head on, he would not unless it was absolutely necessary, especially after the agreements made between he, Enlil, and Noah and Noah's family after the flood. Elijah set up the wood and cuts a bull into pieces and puts the pieces of the bull on the wood, and then tells the prophets of Baal to pour water on the wood, and the bull offering for the repentance of Baal's prophets. This was a sacrifice. We know the Anunnaki loves cow sacrifices, and Enlil, Enki, and Ki are at the top of every ancient pantheon as a bull, ram, goat, sacred cow, or some horned deity because of this. This is why cows are always getting abducted by aliens. They love beef and horned mutton-like animal sacrifices. So Elijah is setting up 12 sacrifices representing each tribe, and then he asks God to answer him so the people will know that Yahweh is the one true God of Israel. So God gives a sign and burns the wood and sacrifice. The people then begin to cry out that Yahweh is their God, and then Elijah turns around and orders for all 450 of these Baal prophets to be assassinated at the Kishon River. And that is the end of the story for these prophets of Baal. The Kishon River is a river in Israel that flows into the Mediterranean Sea, which is located near the city of Haifa. There is such a stark contrast, however, to the general reaction of the Israelites and the prophets and God himself murdering plethora of people in the name of their beliefs versus the ghastly reaction people have to other groups of people outside of the Israelites doing the exact same thing in the name of their beliefs. And not only that, but the Bible is only one side of the story. The whole Old Testament is just us following Shem's lineage. If we were reading a Bible made by the ancient Canaanites, I am very sure that we would all demonize the Semites if the ancient Canaanites were as one-sided as the Bible is in its narration about what actually occurred. Elijah literally just challenged these people's beliefs. He actually succeeded in winning them over, got them to convert, and just 2 seconds later orders all 450 of them to be slaughtered. This was payback, however, for Jezebel ordering the assassination of Yahweh's prophets in Israel. Elijah then goes to the top of Mount Carmel and told his servant to look at the sea. After his servant looked at the sea 7 times, the servant saw a cloud. Then the sky turned dark and it began to rain. So in reality, what just happened was that to appease Enlil, Elijah performed both an animal and mass human sacrificial ritual. In the Mesopotamian narratives, in order to stop certain phenomena and natural disasters such as local floods, plagues, famines, and the sorts, Enki would discreetly tell Noah which Anunnaki entity was in control of causing such things, and he would tell Noah which Anunnaki entity to go to and how to basically butter that entity up via sacrifices and certain rituals. Because remember, these gods are not pure and stoic like most people think when they think of deities. These entities had personalities, character. They had feelings. They had things they liked, things they disliked, things that would anger them, and things that could make them change their mind and their ways. They could be swayed and buttered up. One example in the Mesopotamian narratives is when Enlil orders a plague, and then comes the story of the Anunnaki entity named Namtar, who is Enlil's son and the creator of the Z's. And Namtar, of course, followed his father's instruction and would release disease and plagues on humans whenever Enlil saw fit and ordered him to do so. Enki told Noah, in order to stop the plague and the famine that was occurring, stop worshiping all the other Anunnaki entities except for Namtar. He then told Noah to seek out Namtar and take to him baked loaves of bread and tasty food offerings, and that the offerings would make Namtar ashamed of what he has done, and he would stop plaguing the people. Noah does exactly what Enki tells him to, and gathers the elders and senior men of Sumeria to assist him, and in addition they also built a temple for Namtar to really sweeten the pot. Namtar became ashamed and embarrassed by all the offerings, as he was the only god being noticed by the people, and it was not long before he stopped the spreading of the plagues and the people recovered, and all things went on per usual. And this is why they call Enki the deity of mischief, because Enki is very clever, he is wise, and he always finds a loophole around things. He outwits the other Anunnaki entities, but he would always do it on behalf of mankind. And of course, this rubbed Enlil horribly wrong, so Enki gets a really bad rep in religion. In religion, Enki is known as Satan, the Lord of Deceit. So this appeasement to specific entities via specific offerings and rituals in ancient cultures, and even in indigenous cultures to this day, is about appeasing the different gods. Different gods have different things that they like. There are different ways and conditions to approach them. They each have their different personalities. And this is why indigenous cultures perform human and animal sacrifices. Elijah just literally performed an animal and human and blood sacrifice to biblical Yahweh to appease Yahweh in order for him to stop the drought. And it obviously made Yahweh, aka Enlil, pleased because it did begin to rain again, finally, after such a long drought in Samaria.
Chapter 19.
And Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah had done, and withal how he had slain all the prophets with the sword. Then Jezebel sent a messenger unto Elijah, saying, So let the gods do to me, and more also, if I make not thy life as the life of one of them by tomorrow about this time. And when he saw that, he arose and went for his life, and came to Beersheba, which belongeth to Judah, and left his servant there. But he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness, and came and sat down under a juniper tree. And he requested for himself that he might die, and said, It is enough. Now, O Lord, take away my life, for I am not better than my fathers. And as he lay and slept under a juniper tree, behold, then an angel touched him, and said unto him, Arise and eat. And he looked, and behold, there was a cake baken on the coals, and a cruse of water at his head. And he did eat and drink, and laid him down again. And the angel of the Lord came again the second time, and touched him, and said, Arise and eat, because the journey is too great for thee. And he arose, and did eat and drink, and went in the strength of that meat 40 days and 40 nights unto Horeb, the mount of God. And he came thither unto a cave, and lodged there. And behold, the word of the Lord came to him, and he said unto him, What doest thou here, Elijah? And he said, I have been very jealous for the Lord God of hosts. For the children of Israel have forsaken thy covenant, thrown down thine altars, and slain thy prophets with the sword. And I, even I only, am left, and they seek my life to take it away. And he said, Go forth and stand upon the mount before the Lord. And behold, the Lord passed by, and a great and strong wind rent the mountains, and brake in pieces the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire a still small voice. And it was so, when Elijah heard it, that he wrapped his face in his mantle, and went out, and stood in the entering in of the cave. And behold, there came a voice unto him, and said, What doest thou here, Elijah? And he said, I have been very jealous for the Lord God of hosts, because the children of Israel have forsaken thy covenant, thrown down thine altars, and slain thy prophets with the sword. And I, even I only, am left, and they seek my life to take it away. And the Lord said unto him, Go, return on thy way to the wilderness of Damascus. And when thou comest, anoint Hazael to be king over Syria. And Jehu the son of Nimshi shalt thou anoint to be king over Israel. And Elisha the son of Shaphat of Abel-Maholah shalt thou anoint to be prophet in thy room. And it shall come to pass that him that escapeth the sword of Hazael shall Jehu slay, and him that escapeth from the sword of Jehu shall Elisha slay. Yet I have left me 7,000 in Israel, all the knees which have not bowed unto Baal, and every mouth which hath not kissed him. So he departed thence, and found Elisha the son of Shaphat, who was plowing with 12 yoke of oxen before him, and he with the 12th. And Elijah passed by him, and cast his mantle upon him. And he left the oxen, and ran after Elijah, and said, Let me, I pray thee, kiss my father and my mother, and then I will follow thee. And he said unto him, Go back again, for what have I done to thee? And he returned back from him, and took a yoke of oxen, and slew them, and boiled their flesh with the instruments of the oxen, and gave unto the people, and they did eat. Then he arose and went after Elijah and ministered unto him.
In 1 Kings chapter 19, we learn that King Ahab tells Jezebel how Elijah had killed all the Baal prophets. Jezebel then sends a hit out on Elijah by way of her soldiers to have Elijah killed. As you can see, King Ahab ran and told his wife Jezebel this issue instead of just handling it himself. So Jezebel, of course, takes matters into her own hands. This will not be the last time that we see this situation occur. Elijah saw that he could not remain in Israel safely as Jezebel had just vowed to kill him. Elijah was not afraid to die, but according to verse 4, he did not want Jezebel to murder him, because if she had succeeded in murdering him, then all his work would be in vain. Elijah also did not want to remain in an unsafe environment because it would be forcing God to protect him. So of course he runs away to Beersheba, which was ruled by the king of Judah. Elijah had ran in front of the chariots of King Ahab, and as a result, he was very weary and very tired, just worn out. So now he asked God to take his life. Then he fell asleep, and as he slept under a tree, God sent an angel who gave Elijah food and water. This gave Elijah enough strength to walk 300 miles to Mount Sinai. On Mount Sinai, God asked Elijah what he was doing there, to which Elijah replied that he was jealous for biblical Yahweh, as the Israelites had rebelled against Yahweh. Elijah had truly believed that he was the only righteous man left in Israel. However, Obadiah, who was Ahab's palace officer, was still faithful to God, as well as the prophets Obadiah had managed to protect from execution by Jezebel. Soon the Lord would tell Elijah about the many Israelites who were also serving him. The Lord tells Elijah to go to the wilderness of Damascus and anoint Hazael as king of Syria. God also tells Elijah to anoint Jehu, the son of Jehoshaphat, as the king of Israel, and then to anoint Elisha as the prophet to take Elijah's place. At that time, Elisha was the pupil of Elijah. God tells Elijah to anoint Elisha in his place because remember, Elijah just told God that he wants to die, that he was tired. So this is God making arrangements so that things will proceed on after he decides to rapture Elijah up to the heavens. God foretells that King Jehu shall kill whoever flees King Hazael's sword, and that the prophet Elisha shall kill whoever flees King Jehu's sword. And he also tells Elijah that he had reserved 7,000 people in the kingdom of Israel who had not bowed down before Baal. In the last part of this chapter, Elijah goes to appoint Elisha as his successor as God had instructed.
Chapter 21.
And it came to pass after these things that Naboth the Jezreelite had a vineyard which was in Jezreel, hard by the palace of Ahab king of Samaria. And Ahab spake unto Naboth, saying, Give me thy vineyard, that I may have it for a garden of herbs, because it is near unto my house, and I will give thee for it a better vineyard than it. Or, if it seem good to thee, I will give thee the worth of it in money. And Naboth said to Ahab, The Lord forbiddeth me that I should give the inheritance of my fathers unto thee. And Ahab came into his house heavy and displeased because of the word which Naboth the Jezreelite had spoken to him. For he had said, I will not give thee the inheritance of my fathers. And he laid him down upon his bed, and turned away his face, and would eat no bread. But Jezebel his wife came to him, and said unto him, Why is thy spirit so sad that thou eatest no bread? And he said unto her, Because I spake unto Naboth the Jezreelite, and said unto him, Give me thy vineyard for money, or else if it please thee I will give thee another vineyard for it. And he answered, I will not give thee my vineyard. And Jezebel his wife said unto him, Dost thou now govern the kingdom of Israel? Arise and eat bread, and let thine heart be merry. I will give thee the vineyard of Naboth the Jezreelite. So she wrote letters in Ahab's name, and sealed them with his seal, and sent the letters unto the elders and to the nobles that were in his city, dwelling with Naboth. And she wrote in the letters, saying, Proclaim a fast, and set Naboth on high among the people, and set 2 men, sons of Belial, before him, to bear witness against him, saying, Thou didst blaspheme God and the king, and then carry him out and stone him, that he may die. And the men of his city, even the elders and the nobles who were the inhabitants in his city, did as Jezebel had sent unto them, and as it was written in the letters which she had sent unto them. They proclaimed a fast, and set Naboth on high among the people. And there came in 2 men, children of Belial, and sat before him. And the men of Belial witnessed against him, even against Naboth, in the presence of the people, saying, Naboth did blaspheme God and the king. Then they carried him forth out of the city, and stoned him with stones, that he died. Then they sent to Jezebel, saying, Naboth is stoned, and is dead. And it came to pass, when Jezebel heard that Naboth was stoned and was dead, that Jezebel said to Ahab, Arise, take possession of the vineyard of Naboth the Jezreelite, which he refused to give thee for money. For Naboth is not alive, but dead. And it came to pass, when Ahab heard that Naboth was dead, that Ahab rose up to go down to the vineyard of Naboth the Jezreelite, to take possession of it. And the word of the Lord came to Elijah the Tishbite, saying, Arise, go down to meet Ahab king of Israel, which is in Samaria. Behold, he is in the vineyard of Naboth, whither he is gone down to possess it. And thou shalt speak unto him, saying, Thus saith the Lord, Hast thou killed, and also taken possession? And thou shalt speak unto him, saying, Thus saith the Lord, In the place where dogs licked the blood of Naboth, shall dogs lick thy blood, even thine. And Ahab said to Elijah, Hast thou found me, O mine enemy? And he answered, I have found thee, because thou hast sold thyself to work evil in the sight of the Lord. Behold, I will bring evil upon thee, and will take away thy posterity, and will cut off from Ahab him that pisseth against the wall, and him that is shut up and left in Israel, and will make thine house like the house of Jeroboam the son of Nebat, and like the house of Baasha the son of Ahijah, for the provocation wherewith thou hast provoked me to anger, and made Israel to sin. And of Jezebel also spake the Lord, saying, The dogs shall eat Jezebel by the wall of Jezreel. Him that dieth of Ahab in the city the dogs shall eat, and him that dieth in the field shall the fowls of the air eat. But there was none like unto Ahab, which did sell himself to work wickedness in the sight of the Lord, whom Jezebel his wife stirred up. And he did very abominably in following idols, according to all things as did the Amorites, whom the Lord cast out before the children of Israel. And it came to pass, when Ahab heard those words, that he rent his clothes, and put sackcloth upon his flesh, and fasted, and lay in sackcloth, and went softly. And the word of the Lord came to Elijah the Tishbite, saying, Seest thou how Ahab humbleth himself before me? Because he humbleth himself before me, I will not bring the evil in his days, but in his son's days will I bring the evil upon his house.
In this chapter, we see King Ahab wants the vineyard of a man that lives near his palace named Naboth. Naboth inherited his vineyard. It is heir's property passed down through his family. And so no matter how much Ahab tries to persuade Naboth and make a fair exchange by offering money or an even better vineyard in exchange for Naboth's vineyard, Naboth declines to give away his family's property. This is understandable. This is like investors trying to buy out the familial properties of black people, and some people are not given in because the property was in their family, since blacks were allowed to own property in this country. Very much understandable. King Ahab, however, is unhappy and goes back home and is pouting over Naboth's rejection. Jezebel notices King Ahab, her husband's disposition, and asks Ahab what is troubling him. And Ahab tells her about the situation with Naboth, to which Jezebel basically checks her husband, asking like, aren't you the king? Basically saying, grow a background, remember who you are. But to make her husband happy again, she takes matters into her own hands and basically sets Naboth up. She orders a special fasting day where Naboth is put into a prominent spot amongst the people, and then two others across from him would bring charges against Naboth, lying, saying that he had cursed the king and God. Naboth was then stoned to death because of this, and afterwards Jezebel told Ahab that his vineyard is now up for grabs. God tells Elijah to go meet Ahab and relay the message that he, God, is angry about Naboth's death, and that because of this, Ahab's descendants would suffer like Jeroboam and Baasha, and that dogs would eat all that belongs to Ahab, Jezebel included. Ahab is scared, and he basically humbles himself real quick and does a complete 180 to appease Yahweh, and so Yahweh spares him, but still says that Ahab's son would still suffer the consequences because of his dad's doing. Now that sucks. Imagine an innocent child being targeted by God and then growing up to become evil because they've always felt God ignored them or basically had it out for them since birth. It's like being born into hell. This is what is happening. But people completely overlook this and will chant, "That is the power of God. Amen." But imagine you were that child. If you are a black person in America whose ancestors were enslaved, then you are the children of whom were cursed for your forefathers' transgressions against biblical Yahweh, according to the word of God. It does not feel good when you look at it from that standpoint now, does it? And yes, Jezebel was very slick here. She was very wrong, and I do not condone murder. But if we are going to be fair, by this point in the Bible, Yahweh has been executing and ordering murders 1,000 times over. So her ordering this one man to be killed is what people typically go nuts over. But why do they not go nuts over everything else that the prophets do and all of these patriarchal figures throughout the Bible do? Why? People completely gloss over the murders carried out by the Israelites in general. Perhaps it is because Jezebel is a woman. But as I said before, Jezebel is from a feminine culture, a culture where a woman is not only a homemaker, but an actual business partner and a trophy. She and her husband are equals in the culture that she comes from. This is not the same culture that Ahab comes from, however. It's the complete opposite of Ahab's culture. Jezebel saw that her husband wanted something and was unable to obtain it, and so she stepped up and got it done for him. And he was about to collect the rewards of her labor until Elijah came along. So obviously Ahab was very pleased with what she had done. Ahab is such a fickle character, however. His loyalties and opinions are very easily swayed depending on who he is talking to. You cannot trust people like this, and you cannot say a woman like Jezebel is masculine. The thing is, every human, regardless of gender, possesses traits of the divine masculine and the divine feminine. Most people are not balanced, however. But the thing with women like Jezebel when it comes to men like Ahab is that she possesses more of the divine masculine than Ahab does, and it shows. The rest of Jezebel's story continues in 2 Kings chapter 9.
Chapter 9.
And Elisha the prophet called one of the children of the prophets, and said unto him, Gird up thy loins, and take this box of oil in thine hand, and go to Ramoth Gilead. And when thou comest thither, look out there Jehu the son of Jehoshaphat the son of Nimshi, and go in, and make him arise up from among his brethren, and carry him to an inner chamber. Then take the box of oil, and pour it on his head, and say, Thus saith the Lord, I have anointed thee king over Israel. Then open the door, and flee, and tarry not. So the young man, even the young man the prophet, went to Ramoth Gilead. And when he came, behold, the captains of the host were sitting. And he said, I have an errand to thee, O captain. And Jehu said, Unto which of all us? And he said, To thee, O captain. And he arose and went into the house. And he poured the oil on his head, and said unto him, Thus saith the Lord God of Israel, I have anointed thee king over the people of the Lord, even over Israel. And thou shalt smite the house of Ahab thy master, that I may avenge the blood of my servants the prophets, and the blood of all the servants of the Lord at the hand of Jezebel. For the whole house of Ahab shall perish, and I will cut off from Ahab him that pisseth against the wall, and him that is shut up and left in Israel. And I will make the house of Ahab like the house of Jeroboam the son of Nebat, and like the house of Baasha the son of Ahijah. And the dogs shall eat Jezebel in the portion of Jezreel, and there shall be none to bury her. And he opened the door, and fled. Then Jehu came forth to the servants of his lord, and one said unto him, Is all well? Wherefore came this mad fellow to thee? And he said unto them, Ye know the man and his communication. And they said, It is false, tell us now. And he said, Thus and thus spake he to me, saying, Thus saith the Lord, I have anointed thee king over Israel. Then they hasted, and took every man his garment, and put it unto him on the top of the stairs, and blew with trumpets, saying, Jehu is king. So Jehu the son of Jehoshaphat the son of Nimshi conspired against Joram. Now Joram had kept Ramoth Gilead, he and all Israel, because of Hazael king of Syria. But King Joram was returned to be healed in Jezreel of the wounds which the Syrians had given him when he fought with Hazael king of Syria. And Jehu said, If it be your minds, Then let none go forth nor escape out of the city to go to tell it in Jezreel. So Jehu rode in a chariot and went to Jezreel, for Joram lay there. And Ahaziah king of Judah was come down to see Joram. And there stood a watchman on the tower in Jezreel, and he spied the company of Jehu as he came, and said, I see a company. And Joram said, Take an horseman, and send to meet them, and let him say, Is it peace? So there went one on horseback to meet him, and said, Thus saith the king, Is it peace? And Jehu said, What hast thou to do with peace? Turn thee behind me. And the watchman told, saying, The messenger came to them, but he cometh not again. Then he sent out a second on horseback, which came to them and said, Thus saith the king, Is it peace? And Jehu answered, What hast thou to do with peace? Turn thee behind me. And the watchman told, saying, He came even unto them, and cometh not again. And the driving is like the driving of Jehu the son of Nimshi, for he driveth furiously. And Joram said, Make ready. And his chariot was made ready. And Joram king of Israel and Ahaziah king of Judah went out each in his chariot, and they went out against Jehu, and met him in the portion of Naboth the Jezreelite. And it came to pass, when Joram saw Jehu, that he said, Is it peace, Jehu? And he answered, What peace, so long as the whoredoms of thy mother Jezebel and her witchcrafts are so many? And Joram turned his hands and fled, and said to Ahaziah, There is treachery, O Ahaziah. And Jehu drew a bow with his full strength, and smote Jehoram between his arms, and the arrow went out at his heart, and he sunk down in his chariot. Then said Jehu to Bidkar his captain, Take up and cast him in the portion of the field of Naboth the Jezreelite. For remember how that when I and thou rode together after Ahab his father, the Lord laid this burden upon him. Surely I have seen yesterday the blood of Naboth, and the blood of his sons, saith the Lord, and I will requite thee in this plat, saith the Lord. Now therefore take and cast him into the plat of ground according to the word of the Lord. But when Ahaziah the king of Judah saw this, he fled by the way of the garden house. And Jehu followed after him, and said, Smite him also in the chariot. And they did so at the going up to Gur, which is by Ibleam. And he fled to Megiddo, and died there. And his servants carried him in a chariot to Jerusalem, and buried him in his sepulchre with his fathers in the city of David. And in the 11th year of Joram the son of Ahab began Ahaziah to reign over Judah. And when Jehu was come to Jezreel, Jezebel heard of it, and she painted her face, and tired her head, and looked out at a window. And as Jehu entered in at the gate, she said, Had Zimri peace, who slew his master? And he lifted up his face to the window, and said, Who is on my side? Who? And there looked out to him 2 or 3 eunuchs. And he said, Throw her down. So they threw her down, and some of her blood was sprinkled on the wall and on the horses, and he trode her under foot. And when he was come in, he did eat and drink, and said, Go, see now this cursed woman, and bury her, for she is a king's daughter. And they went to bury her, but they found no more of her than the skull, and the feet, and the palms of her hands. Wherefore they came again and told him, and he said, This is the word of the Lord which he spake by his servant Elijah the Tishbite, saying, In the portion of Jezreel shall dogs eat the flesh of Jezebel, and the carcass of Jezebel shall be as dung upon the face of the field in the portion of Jezreel, so that they shall not say, This is Jezebel.
The prophet Elisha told his messenger to travel to Ramoth Gilead and to take some olive oil with him. The messenger was also told to find Jehu, the son of Jehoshaphat, and to take him to an inner room. Remember, Jehu was the same prophet who foresaw the assassination of Baasha's son and entire family that would come to pass because of King Baasha's wickedness. So now Elisha is sending a messenger to find Jehu and pour the olive oil over Jehu's head and tell Jehu that God had anointed him to be the new king of Israel. So the crowning of kingship is done accordingly. And Jehu told his friends what had happened. His friends then put their cloaks underneath 8th Jehu, and trumpets sounded as they declared Jehu the new king of Israel. King Jehu then conspires against Joram. Joram is the son of Jezebel and Ahab. Jehu and his troops go to Jezreel since Joram was there. One of Joram's men went out to meet them and to ask them if they had came in peace. The man did not report back to Joram, however. So Joram sends out another man, but he too does not return. So Joram himself rides out his own chariot to meet with King Jehu and asks Jehu if Jehu had came in peace. King Jehu tells Joram that there could be no peace because of the witchcraft and the idolatry that was caused by Joram's mother, Jezebel. Again, when Jezebel is called a whore, it does not mean a whore that chooses between human men, but rather a whore that chooses between many gods as she pleases to worship. So again, when people correlate sex workers with Jezebel, it does not make any type of sense, because they only say that because they believe that Jezebel was an actual prostitute. As far as witchcraft is just a marker that a culture has preserved the forbidden knowledge that the fallen angels, aka the Anunnaki, shared with mankind, which is the ability to manipulate the environment around you via different tools: the weather, your mind, plants, words, song, cymatics, sacred geometry, manifestation, and also the knowledge of how to contact the Anunnaki and have them act on your behalf via certain rituals and sigils and so forth. This is all witchcraft is. It is that thin line between spirit and science, which is why these people were also called advanced people. So Jezebel was from that cut of the cloth. And of course, biblical Yahweh tried to make humans extinct to get rid of that knowledge that spurned from the fallen angels to mankind prior to the flood, because it made mankind too independent from him specifically. So of course, when they speak of Jezebel doing witchcraft, it is always negative. Yahweh does not approve of this, unless he is the one orchestrating the witchcraft to be done by one of his chosen people and prophets like Elijah. So Joram flees, but King Jehu kills him with an arrow. When the king of Judah, who is the king of the two southern tribes, King Ahaziah, saw what happened to Joram, he fled to a place named Beth Hagan. King Jehu and his men then chased King Ahaziah down and wounded him, but King Ahaziah was still able to reach Megiddo, which is where King Ahaziah died. Megiddo is another town in northern Israel and is located near Jezreel Valley. King Jehu then went to Jezreel to find Jezebel. He saw a couple of her eunuchs and told them that if they supported him, then they should throw her out of the window. Now in 1 Kings 22, Ahab went with Jehoshaphat of Judah to recover Ramoth Gilead from the Arameans. Ironically, Jehoshaphat is also Jehu's father, but he was once a war ally of Ahab. During this battle, Ahab disguised himself, but was mortally wounded by an unaimed arrow. The Bible says that dogs licked King Ahab's blood and fulfilled the prophecy of Elijah. Kingship was passed down then to Ahab's son named Joram, and Jezebel was still a part of the monarchy, or she had some type of pill, and even might have still been deemed and called queen. So when Jehu was crowned king, of course Joram and Jezebel initially did not know that he was going to be crowned. Because of the matter of which it was done, God told Elisha to tell a messenger to go crown Jehu. This was not something done in the order of the courts. So now Jehu has to get rid of the residing monarchy, which is Joram and Jezebel, because they currently have the throne despite him just being crowned and appointed by God. Joram and Ahaziah were brothers and were both the sons of Ahab and Jezebel. Ahaziah had been the 8th king of the northern kingdom of Israel, and Joram succeeded his brother Ahaziah and became the 9th king of the northern kingdom of Israel. So this is a face-off for the crown. So that's why when King Jehu approached King Joram's palace in the manner that he did, King Joram was unsure of what stance Jehu was taking and likely assumed that it was not a friendly stance and that King Jehu was coming to take the crown just based off the manner of which Jehu approached. And that is why when Joram sent messengers, Jehu told the messengers to get behind him, meaning you do not want any parts of this. You want to be on the winning team. Get behind me if you are going to be behind me, as I am your new king and I am here to clean house. So by the time King Jehu is on Jezebel's tail, word has already spread that he killed her son Joram, and he is here to take what is his, which is the rightful place of the crowned king. So when Jehu tells the eunuchs that if they support him, they would throw her out of the window, there is an understanding that, hey, he has already killed our king, and Jezebel definitely cannot do anything to stop him now. Of course, they sided with King Jehu and tossed her right on out that window, out of self-preservation, because they're going to have to serve him next. Let's not get on his bad side before we even get started. Not to mention, the eunuchs were Israelites. They probably didn't even like Jezebel because of the way that she was. The eunuchs obviously supported King Jehu because they literally tossed Jezebel out of the window. And time she hit the ground, horses trampled her to death even more, if she already was not dead. King Jehu told some men to bury her because she was, after all, the daughter of a king and deserved to be buried at least with that much respect as a princess. The men went to go do this, but they ran into an issue when they only found Jezebel's hands, feet, and skull. Everything else was gone. When King Jehu learned about this, he said that Elijah the Tishbite had foretold of this. Elijah had said indeed that the dogs of Jezreel would devour Jezebel's flesh. If we are fair, we would say that Jezebel is not just outright cut and dry wrong, but rather this is a story of what happens when there's a marriage of two people who are of completely opposite cultures. Men and women are equally guilty, however, in modern day of going after a challenge of a partner. People simply want what they should not want. They like the feeling of conquering, or the feeling of just being challenged, or the feeling of having a partner who is well known and known to be a wildfire. And these people are happy in their toxic relationship, or it may not even be toxic. They may actually love their partner's spontaneity or quirky or bold ways that are the same ways that everybody else deems as difficult. They get that person, that is their person. The two of them were more like twin flames, direct reflections of each other, but the Bible is patriarchal and rewritten by patriarchal cults, so Jezebel gets all the flack, and nobody cares to explain this woman's side of the story. She married an already quote-unquote wicked king of a country that was already in the midst of chaos and pure war. What she did was minuscule in the grand scheme of things. What she did aligned with the culture that she came from and the way that queens moved in her culture. My personal opinion is that Ahab was a person who already had beliefs and ways that did not adhere to the culture and belief system that he was born into, and that is exactly why he married a woman from a culture outside of his own and opposite of his own, like Jezebel. They were more alike than the woman he had already encountered in his very own country. And not to mention, she was from Phoenicia, a very wealthy country at that time. I am willing to bet that was driving his decision up by 100%. To the ancient Israelites, if you did not ascribe to the structure of their belief in Yahweh and their mannerisms, you were deemed wicked. And of course, a people like the Phoenicians who worship Baal, they were automatically demonized. If you can't understand and respect people outside of your own ethnic group and would deem it racist, prejudiced, judgmental, and wrong for someone to frown upon and disrespect another culture just because it is not of their own in today's time, then you would be able to understand why I say Jezebel was not the wicked woman people make her out to be. Objectively, because of how she murdered prophets, I would say she is actually just as wicked as any of the patriarchs of the Bible who did the exact same thing, but at a more exponential rate. The woman could have had indeed a nasty attitude to accompany her foreign culture being brought into Israel. I am not saying that she was a saint by any type of means, but she was just as much evil as any of the men who are put on pedestals in the Bible. And if you are going to put blame and deem her as evil and do it so profoundly, then keep that same energy for Ahab as well, because he chose her, and the good book itself says that he was very wicked prior to even marrying her. Let's keep that same energy.